sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In Surah Al-Ankabut, Allah says, "Utlu ma uhiya ilayka min al-kitabi wa aqim as-salah." Recite, O Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, what has been revealed to you from your Lord. Wa aqim as-salah, and establish the salah. Inna as-salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Because certainly the salah will prevent the people from al-fahsha, indecent practices, wal munkar, and obnoxious activities. So when the people perform salah and you still find them in dirty activities, there's a question mark. How have they really properly, actually, truly observed the salah? May Allah forgive us all. We were on standing up from ruku. We've discussed the standing from ruku. The procedure we are to observe is going on sujood. So when a person stands up from ruku, it says during the standing up, Sami Allahu liman hamid. And while fully standing, he will say Rabbana lakal hamd or walakal hamd or Allahumma Rabbana walakal hamd or Allahumma Rabbana lakal hamd, as we described them. And then when he is ready to go for sujood, he will raise his hands. There's an issue here. Should he raise his hands or not if we go on sujood? The ulama have a difference, and it arises from two hadiths. So the appropriate thing is to put the hadiths together. Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu said, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will make takbir 4 times. The first one, al-ihram. The second one, when he is going on ruku. The third one, when he is standing up from ruku. And then the fourth one, when he stands up for the second rak'ah. He says, وَلَا يَرْفَعُ يَدَيْهِ إِذَا سَجَدَ. And if he goes on sujood, he will not raise his hands. This hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. But why Ibn Hujr radiyallahu anhu, Malik ibn Huwairis radiyallahu anhu said, رَأَيْتُ النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. I saw the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam while he was going on sujood, rafa'a yadayhi. So the issue is, we would say, it meant that sometimes he would not raise his hands while he's going on sujood, and sometimes he would raise his hands while going on sujood. So Ibn Umar saw on that occasion, I didn't see him raising his hands while going on sujood, and reported it, radiyallahu anhu. Malik ibn Huwairis saw him raising his hand, and he reported it. So the correct view is, sometimes we can raise our hands while going on sujood, and sometimes we may not raise our hands while going on sujood. At this, we would have acted upon the 2 reports. So while we are going on sujood, we can raise the hand as we did while going on ruku or while commencing the salah. Allahu Akbar. Also to the levels of our shoulders or to the level of our earlobes. We will do that while going on sujood. Allahu Akbar. And then we go on sujood. So how do we go on sujood? We go on sujood going with the knees first, like that. Or we go on sujood going with the hands first, like that. How do we go on sujood? This is also an issue for discourse amongst ulama. Many times, it will suffice for an entire discussion to discuss why ulama differ. It's not because they like to differ. Many of the people, especially elites, they will say everything you say ulama differ. When will they stop differing? They have issues they didn't differ upon. For example, that if you don't stand up in salah, you don't have salah. If you are able to stand up. Al-Qiyamu fi salah, it's ruknun bil ijma. Takbiratul ihram, ruknun bil ijma. There are a lot of issues they are agreed upon. But when they differ, why have they differed? If we understand the basis for the difference, it will make a lot of things easy for us. And we will not ascribe what is inappropriate to them. So going on sujood, the correct thing, let me quickly say that, The correct thing is to go on sujood with our hands. And then our knees. When we go on sujood, Allahu Akbar, we drop our hands, then we drop our knees. When we go on sujood, Allahu Akbar, what do we drop first? Our hands. And then our knees. And then our hands. Some ulama say we drop the legs. It's wrong. We come back to it. So why do we say we drop our hands? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that the Prophet said, إِذَا سَجَدَ أَحَدُكُمْ, when any of you goes on his sujood, فَلَا يَبْرُكْ كَمَا يَبْرُكُ الْبَعِيرُ, when any of you goes on sujood, let him not kneel, let him not go on his knees, كَمَا يَبْرُكُ الْبَعِيرُ, as the camel kneels down. Don't kneel as the camel kneels. فَلْيُقَدِّمْ يَدَيْهِ, let him put forward his two hands. This hadith occurs in Sunan Abi Dawud. It occurs in Sunan Al-Tirmidhi. The large majority of the ulama agree that this hadith is authentic. But the area of difference is, what does hadith mean? So those two opinions are based on this same hadith. The issue is, what does it mean? He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, La tabruk iza sajada ahadukum, when any of you goes on sajda, fala yabruk, he should not, la yabruk, don't do it, kama yabrukul ba'in. It is not only in this condition that Islam prohibits us from behaving like animals. There are many things. We mentioned some of them in Salat. Islam does not like us to behave like the lower animals. So one of them is in this circumstance. Don't go as the camel goes. So the question is, how does the camel go? The first issue is, where is the knee of the camel? Where is the knee of the camel? Al-Imam Ibn al-Munzir, he has a book, Lisanul Arab. It's a dictionary. And others, they say, Rukbatul Ba'ir fi yadayh. Rukbatul Ba'ir fi yadayh. All animals, including camels, they have their knees on their hands. But we have our knees on our feet. Our knees are on our feet. They have their knees on their hands. And they have what they call urkuban on their feet. The one on their feet is referred to as urkuban. But their knees occur on their hands, subhanAllah. This is for all animals that walk on their feet, that walk on both arms. The knees occur on the hands. And the hands are those two limbs in the front. When the camel goes kneeling down, it drops that knee first. So you don't do like that. Meaning, don't drop your knees first. That's why he ended that hadith with, put your hands first. The knees of the camel occur on their hands. When they go down, they drop the hands first. And that hand is bearing the knee. The hand is on the ground. The knee goes down first. So it says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't do like that. So the correct thing is, don't drop your knees first. Drop your hands first. So the correct thing is to drop the hands first. That will conform with the end of that hadith. Because it said, put your hands first. So the correct thing is to put our hands first, and then our knees, and then our heads. But the other interpretation, they say the camel drops the hand first. So don't drop your hand first. It is true that it is the hand that it is dropping. But the hands, the palms, so to speak, are already on the ground. So what does it drop first? The knees. It dropped the knees first. But they say no, it dropped the hand. That the knee, yes, is on the hand, but it dropped the hand first. So you don't drop the hand, say no, you drop the knees. That is why that hadith ends to say, you put your hands first. Okay. If we don't even understand how the camel behaves, the end of that hadith said to us, drop your hand first. So in interpretation, both in the meaning and from the text, we can prove that the correct thing to drop first is what? Our hands. And not what? Our knees. I hope that this matter is clear today. It brings a lot of issues. So when we go on sajda, say Allahu Akbar, we drop our hands, and then our face, and then our heads on the ground. There are two issues around this. Firstly is regarding the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, Raziyallahu anhuma. This hadith occurs in Sahih Muslim. He said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam said, Inni umirtu an asjida ala sab'ati a'zumi. I have been ordered, and in Sahih Bukhari, I have been ordered to prostrate upon 7 limbs. Said, I have been commanded to prostrate upon 7 limbs. And Abdullah ibn Abbas started by touching the tip of the nose and al-jabha. These two make one. When I was far younger than this, someone in the masjid where I grew up, the man is big man. So when he prostrates, he chooses what he does. I remember his name now. If he puts the head on the ground, the nose will not be on the ground. So sometimes he puts the nose, he does not put the head. I remember asking my father this question. Why does this man behave like this? Sometimes the head on the ground, the nose will not be on the ground. Sometimes the nose on the ground, the head will not be on the ground. The two must be on the ground. Both the forehead and the tip of our noses, they make one count. Out of the 7 things that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam was ordered to place on the ground during sujood, the first of them is what? The forehead and what? The tip of the nose. Then the 2 palms. Making how many? 3. Then the 2 knees. Making how many? 5. Then the tips of the toes. Making how many? 7. He said, I have been commanded to make sure that as I prostrate, 7 things are on the ground. So we prostrate 7 things on the ground. Don't forget, 7 things must be on the ground when you prostrate. In another hadith in Sunan Nabiyy, also the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, he was keen about knowledge. When at the beginning, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he will say Allahu Akbar, he will be silent. What did Abu Hurairah do? He went to him and said, Messenger, that's your silence. What are you doing there? What are you saying? This is a symbol of someone who is keen about learning. When in the fitna after the messenger went away, there was trouble amongst the people. He was not involved. He was teaching in the classes. When trouble comes to people, when people go away, he begins to teach. Which person's knowledge will be spread? The knowledge of those in issues or the knowledge of those in the classrooms? Of course. So you hear about Abu Hurairah in about every circumstance. Radiyallahu anhu. When the Prophet was alive, he came. The last 3 years of the Prophet's life, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Abu Hurairah was with him. So much that when the people went to the market, he was not going. He bore the consequent hunger. Because if you are not trading to make profit, you can't be begging. So what consequences upon that? What comes upon that as a consequence? Hunger. He bore it, but Allah still diverted wealth to him afterwards. He became so rich, Abu Huraira, radiyallahu anhu, because wealth and knowledge are two different things. And Allah gives the two of them. Let's leave that at that. Abu Huraira, radiyallahu anhu, was always asking the Prophet. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Iza sajada ahadukum, when any of you is in his sujood or makes his sujood, fala yaftarishu firashal kalb, let him not go on the ground, stay on the ground as a dog does. How does the dog do? It places its arms inside itself when it goes. So you see it like that. It clasps what we can say the elbow to the chest area, and you see it on the ground like that. Say, don't behave like that. Open your hands. So when you go on sujood, women do that a lot. You see them like this. And I have read it in the book before that that is how women should. But it's wrong. The Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Iza sajada ahadukum, when any one of you who? My ummah, when you go on sujood, fala yaftarish, let him not clasp himself on the ground. Iftirash al-kalb, the way a dog will fold itself on the ground. What did he say? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First instruction, don't clasp. Meaning that we open our armpits, not to give the next person some form of elbowing, but by way of keeping away your elbows away from your body when you are on sujood. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَلْيَضُمَّ فَخِذَيْهِ, let him also put his laps together. Don't clasp your hands on your body, but let your legs be together. Fakhiz are our laps. So if we are on sujood, we want to put our laps together, we put the laps together. In sujood, who said so? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I will make this correct sujood, inshallah. Then I will explain a point regarding putting the laps together while in sujood. So we make sujood. We are on the ground. Don't forget, 7 places. Go. The tip of the nose, the forehead, the tip of the nose and the forehead. Then he says these hands, in some reports when the messenger made nawafil, the hands will be so away from his body to the extent that a small sheep can pass in between. It goes to show the extent to which we must distance our elbows from where? From our body. Distance it. And then our laps, it says, while yadumma, let him connect the legs. So he puts them together, he goes on. So you note the tip of the head and the tip of the nose, you note the palms, you note the knees, and you note the feet behind, making 7. I'm coming back to the feet, inshallah. So like that. The palms, the fingers of the palm should be directed to the Qibla, not opened, spread away, and not clasped in a fist. All of them facing where? Direction of Qibla. That occurs in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar. All of them must be facing the Qibla, like that. And then the head will be the hand will be either to the level of our shoulders or in between our ears while on the ground. So we are either like this In between here, all like the knees together, and then the feet. Our feet must be connected together. When we connect the feet and place the tip of the toes, we fold it such that the tip of the four toes is directed to the Qibla, like this. That is the correct way to make a sajda. Who said so? The Prophet Muhammad. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You can ask, all of these are things. Who said so? This is the lesson the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam was raised to teach us. Allah was telling us in the Quran, pray, pray, observe salah. He did not explain the salah. He raised the man, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, go and teach them how to pray. This is what he taught us. His companions have reported his actions and statements regarding these matters to us. So we make sujood like that. That is the physical, the hay'ah of sujood. The manner of sujood physically. So what do we say in sujood? Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. And then we can also say Subuhul Qudusun Rabbul Malaikati wa Ruh. Subuh. Is this complex? Subuhul Qudusun Rabbul Malaikati wa Ruh. Oh, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. That is sujood. After the sujood is from the arkan of salah. So after the sujood, we sit down. We come back to sit down after sujood. We say Allahu Akbar, and then we sit down after sujood. The sitting in between the two sujood is usually called al-jalsatu bayna as-sajdatayn. The sitting in between the two prostrations. Because we will prostrate twice. But this sitting has two ways. When we stand up from the sajda, two ways. The first way is to sit, let me say the most. Before that, I had promised to say something about connecting the feet when we are in sujood. There's hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud, hadith of Abu Humayd as-Sa'i. In one of the reports, this hadith has a lot of reports. In one of the reports, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yufarrij rijlayhi fi sujood. He will open his two legs when he is on sujood. This hadith is very weak. It's not reliable. So don't depend on it. It's not a reliable hadith. That is, it is not authentically transmitted from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, al-jalsatu bayna sajdatayn. We are upon the sitting in between two prostrations. So when we are prostrating, and we stand up from prostration, Allahu Akbar. This sitting is called al-iq'ah. The two feet will be joined. The toes of the feet will face the Qibla. The heels will be joined, and then we sit on our heels. We'll place our two palms either on our knees or on our laps. The Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah mentioned that the scholars have a consensus that wherever, either on the laps or on the knees that the hands are placed, it is correct. There are reports for them all, and they are authentic. So we place the hands either on our knees, like this, or on our palms, like that, or on our laps, like that. But the sitting is the point here, between two prostrations. This sitting is called al-iq'ah, and it occurs in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas in Sahih Muslim, that it is from the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to sit like that in between two prostrations. So that is one way of that sitting. The second way to sit in between prostrations is to make al-iftirash. Iftirash. You erect your right feet. You make the toes of the right feet to be in the direction of the Qibla. You make firash. This rug is called firash. So you make your leg to become a firash. That is something you can sit on. Like that. And you sit on it. That's why the sitting is called what? Iftirash. Making your leg to become something you can sit on. So you sit on the leg, you erect the right leg, the right feet. Make it be in the direction of the Qibla. Like this. So you either sit like this, the knees together, the heels together, the toes in the direction of the Qibla, and then we sit on it, or we are sitting in firash. Like that. These are the two ways we sit in between two prostrations. And then we say, اللهم اغفر لي وارحمني واهديني وعافني واجبرني وارزقني. About 6 words will be said. So we say all of them in that sitting. And then we go back to sajda again. So in the second sajda we do as we have done in the first sajda. You can now ask, what is the proof that we should do as we have done there? There are clear-cut reports from the Prophet Sallat that as we did in the first sajda, that is what we do in the second sajda. So what does it remain for us? Standing up for the second rak'ah. How do we stand up for the second rak'ah? How do we stand up from the sitting after we stand, after we sujood? How do we stand up? There are issues around here, but let me quickly say the correct thing when I clarify. The correct thing is to stand up and sit down calmly before we stand up, reclining on our hands. When we are on sujood, we stand up, we sit down, iftirash, count first, and then we place. Some people will say, young people now tell us to, now say to us we should blow. The Prophet was doing like that. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Can it think that the messenger did be a thing of play? During Salah? Was he playing? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sometimes people make a jest of a thing and the implication of the statement are very, very severe. Salah is not a thing of play. There is no play in it. So when we stand up from, when we want to go up for the second rak'ah, we sit down first. Malik ibn Huwairith, he said, كان النبي رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد أن يقوم إلى الركعة الثانية استوى قائدا. Istiwa, he will be balanced first, sit down, balance. He says, Lam yanhab, he will not stand up, hatta yastawiya qa'ida, until he has sat down. Don't say where did they find the hadith. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari. The Prophet would not stand up, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, hatta yastawiya qa'ida, until he is balanced, sitting. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then in another hadith, he says, ثُمَّ يَقُومُ مُعْتَمِدًا. He now stands up while resting. He didn't say, Allah yadayhi. So ulama say, okay, how does he stand up reclining without putting the hands on the ground? How? Someone is to stand up and recline. Okay, how does he stand up reclining without having his hands on the ground? Abu Kilaba was the tabi'i who reported this hadith from Malik ibn al-Huwairis. When he prays to stand up, he sits down. He was there when Malik ibn al-Huwairis. He said Malik ibn al-Huwairis came to the masjid in our locality. When he was describing the Prophet's prayer, he would stand up resting on his hand. So when Abu Kilaba performs Salah, Al-Imam Ibn Abi Shayba in his Musannaf, he said he places his two hands on the ground, resting on them before he stands up. That was what Malik told them he saw the Prophet doing. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's the same Malik that the Prophet told Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that Sallu kama ra'aytumuni. So Malik ibn Huwairis came to explain this is how the Prophet used to pray. He would rest and then stand up. So why do some of the people not do it? They say, the Prophet did it because he was old, he was chubby. Ulama say, don't give this kind of a response. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told the man, pray as you see me pray. The man went to his people after the demise of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam and said to the people, look at me, I will show you how I saw the Messenger pray. And he ordered me to pray as I saw him pray. And the man did the same thing. You come 1,400 years later, I say, no, it was because the Prophet was old. So we follow the instruction. Pray as you see the Messenger pray. How did Malik see him pray? When he's standing up from the prostration to the second rak'ah, jalas, istawa jalis, lam yanhab hatta yastawiya jalis. He will not stand up until he becomes balanced. Sitting, he will sit down first. And then after that, what will he do? He will recline on his hands, and then he will stand up. That's the way to stand up for the second rak'ah. But there are some slight differences between the first and the second rak'ah, such as that in the second rak'ah there is no dua al-istiftah, because we are not starting the salah again. Where do we start from this time? Isti'adah, because we are still going to read Quran. Another difference is that in the second rak'ah we make our qira'ah, the surah we read, wherever we read it from, we make it be lesser in its length than the first rak'ah. The second rak'ah should be lesser in its length, should be shorter than the first rak'ah. Those are some differences between the two. Otherwise, everything we do in the first rak'ah, those are the same things we do in the second rak'ah. I hope that the point is clear. Now, we only left with two things to explain before we end this discussion. Two things. Because we have said everything. You are either repeating a first rak'ah, or you are in a second rak'ah, or you are standing up to a second rak'ah. And all of these we have mentioned them. Two things we need to mention. Al-jalsatu lit-tashahhud, the sitting for at-tashahhud. Jalsatu tashahhud, the sitting for at-tashahhud al-awwal and jalsatu tashahhud al-thani. The sitting for tashahhud, the first tashahhud, and the sitting for the second at-tashahhud. They have some slight differences. So we should address the first tashahhud. We make it in Salatul Maghrib, Salatul Dhuhr, Salatul Asr and Isha. We make tashahhud twice in these prayers. The only prayer where we make tashahhud once is which salah? Salatul Fajr.